Today marks 28 days since our last coronavirus patient recovered. That means today the Northern Territory has officially eradicated the coronavirus. The first and only place in Australia to do so, the safest place in Australia without question. A lot of people can take credit for that. Our incredible frontline healthcare workers, our police working round the clock on the borders and on our streets, business owners and workers who had to sacrifice so much to protect others, our environmental health officers working with businesses to stay safe, our teachers who made sure Territory kids stay safe, stay smart and live as normal a life as possible during a pandemic, public servants doing everything they can to keep people safe, in work and informed. All Territorians for doing the right thing, for staying safe and for seeing this through. Legends, all of you. The most effective weapon in our arsenal has been our hard borders. Our decision to act early and secure the borders kept out the spread of coronavirus, and that meant the Territory could safely open back up before anywhere else to save more jobs. Businesses opened first in the Territory, people went back to work first in the Territory. Sport restarted first in the Territory. Kids kept going to school in the Territory. That's what happened because of our hard borders. Let's also remember what didn't happen because of our hard borders. Territorians didn't die. Everywhere else, people died. Not here, not in the Territory. At the start, that was no sure thing. The worst case predictions had 2,000 Territorians being killed by coronavirus. It had us needing hundreds of ICU beds that do not exist. It's why we had to prepare more body bags, just in case the nightmare scenario became real. But it didn't. We avoided the nightmare. We said we would do whatever it takes to keep Territorians safe, and we did. We acted early, we went full bore at it, it worked, and now we can make the next big call. For the past month, I've been telling Territorians what needed to happen before we could make a decision on easing our hard border restrictions. We needed to safely reopen the Territory economy, our 3 stages of the new normal, and we have done that. We needed to transition from monitored quarantine to self-quarantine, and we are doing that. And we needed to be confident that the active cases of coronavirus in other parts of Australia will continue to fall and community transmission will continue to be low. Crucial to this was waiting to see if the mass gatherings down south a few weekends ago led to outbreaks. Yesterday, the Security and Emergency Management Subcommittee of Cabinet met to consider the latest evidence of transmission and to finalise logistics for reopening our borders. Now that 10 days since those events have passed, this morning I met again with the Chief Health Officer. He has provided me with the final advice that 10 days after the mass gatherings, community transmission down south is now tracking at an acceptable risk level. This was the final piece of the puzzle. The Northern Territory will keep its mandatory quarantine arrangements in place for all states and territories until 12:01 a.m. on Friday the 17th of July. From that date, arrivals will not have to self-quarantine for 14 days before enjoying the Territory. That gives the rest of Australia 4 weeks' notice, and it gives Territorians 4 more weeks to get ready. Let me explain why that time is important. Yes, it gives businesses time to prepare and time for us to market the Territory to visitors. But it also gives us time to lock in the gains that we've made and be absolutely certain that we aren't putting our progress at risk. It's only been 3 days since we took the first step in relaxing our quarantine arrangements. Dr. Heggie's advice, based on the evidence, recommends a 28-day assessment period, 2 replication cycles before making this major change. We need that time to be absolutely certain that self-quarantine is safe before we move to no quarantine. I am not gambling, I am not rolling the dice, I'm not playing poker with the lives of Territorians. This is making decisions based on evidence. If you ever want to know where I stand, it's right here in front of Territorians, putting your lives first. This period also gives the rest of Australia time they need to keep making progress, to keep crushing corona over the next month, as I am confident they will, before we let them come in. The most important reason is this: to simply get it right. Do it once, do it right, keep it simple, keep it certain. And I want to be really clear. This change is for interstate arrivals only. Nothing changes for international arrivals. They will continue to be enforced quarantine. Today's announcement is an exciting step, but it's also a scary step. I know plenty of Territorians feel that way. Whether it's in your emails, on our Facebook, at your doorstep, or on the phone, a lot of you have told me you are worried about doing this. Probably the most common thing I am told by people is this: I know we need to open the borders eventually, but what if it goes wrong? I want to assure you that we are doing absolutely everything, whatever it takes, to do this in a way that continues to protect you and the people you love. I will always put Territorians first. That's why we have that 4-week break. That's the most important caution, but we are doing more. Our police and ADF will continue to stay on our borders and be at all arrival ports for 2 weeks after the quarantine arrangements end. For this period, people will still complete an arrival form telling us where they have come from and where they intend to stay. This gives us an extra layer of protection for additional replication cycle, so we know where people are if we need to find them. We've conducted more than 10,000 tests so far, and we will keep testing as many people, including interstate arrivals, whenever and wherever it is needed. Our test, trace and trap regime is fully operational to make sure that if there is a new case in the Territory, it will not be allowed to spread. We will stand up a dedicated rapid response team to manage any outbreak in any community. The team will have doctors, nurses, pathology staff, contact tracers and logistics specialists, supported by the police as needed. If there is ever an outbreak in the NT, this team will be on the ground straight away and the community will be quarantined while the situation is assessed and controlled. We are also keeping the public health emergency declaration in place. This ensures we can enact new measures as needed to keep Territorians safe and stop any actions that put Territorians at risk. And as always, we will do everything possible to keep our remote communities safe in partnership with land councils and residents. This will include ensuring government workers who choose to leave communities are aware of any coronavirus hotspots if they develop in other states. Workers will be required to declare if they intend to visit a hotspot area, if there are any, and measures can be put in place as needed to ensure there is no risk to communities on their return. We will spend the next 4 weeks working with land councils and our Aboriginal health groups to get these plans right. I know July 17 is too far away for some people. What I've learned in the last few weeks is that everyone has an opinion on when to open the borders. I've been told to never open the borders. I've been told to open them in 2 months, 2 weeks, tomorrow and yesterday. I know I can't make everyone happy, but I can keep people safe and alive. That is why I am listening to the expert medical advice like I have always done. I'm sure the opposition, the Terry Mills Alliance and other special interests will bag this decision straight away. They have that luxury. They get to wash their hands of any responsibility if things go wrong. I can't do that, and I won't do that, because if things go wrong, if coronavirus is allowed to spread here, the consequences could be deadly. And the blood won't be on their hands, it will be on mine. I would rather you hate me right now, and you are alive to hate me, than have the regret of going too soon and stuffing it up. After careful consideration and listening to the medical advice, we will not be creating any travel bubbles. We have legal advice that travel bubbles are not consistent with the Constitution, and because we are not a state, that creates a bigger legal risk for us than it would for others. I also have advice from the Police Commissioner that will be difficult to implement and manage. But honestly, the Constitution is not my concern. If I spent my time during coronavirus and constitutional debate, I may never have closed the borders in the first place. This is a Territory lives come first decision. I will not take any extra chances with this transition. We need the 2 replication cycles I've spoken about. We will do it once, all our borders, all jurisdictions, and we will do it right. To South Australians who want to come here right away, to Territorians who want to go there right away, I am sorry, I am really sorry, but it will take a few weeks longer. To all Territorians who have the time and the means of the next 4 weeks, especially in the school holidays, do me a favour, do yourself a favour, do the right thing by Territorians and help out our tourism operators and our hospital workers. Take a holiday in the Territory. Get in early, grab your Territory tourism voucher, don't miss out. Take rec leave, holiday in the NT, do it now. Don't go down south and freeze your ass off in a pub with 20 people. Get your voucher, go to Kakadu, go to Alice, hop on a fishing charter, something, anything that gets you and your family out in the Territory and backing Territory jobs. As your TIF, I am saying party in the Territory and do it now. This is our plan. to make the Territory the comeback capital while keeping the Territory the safest place in Australia. But please remember, the person who can best keep you safe is you. Even with our hard borders, Territorians have always been the front line. We've been the safest place in Australia because you have been the best, and that's how it has to stay. Next month, there'll be more responsibility on you to keep doing these things. Keep your distance when you can. Wash your hands, and if you feel sick, stay home and get tested. Stay smart, stay safe. You keep doing that, and I'll keep doing whatever it takes to keep the Territory safe and strong. Thank you.
Everything you've done along the way with the pandemic has been in stages. With reopening the Northern Territory to the whole country, why not do it to what South Australia's done and first let in Western Australia, South Australia, states that have, I guess, a lower number, and do that in more of a staged approach to get the economy back to where it should be earlier?
So we have done this in stages, from forced quarantine to self-quarantine to opening. So that's how we see these stages rolling. The advice to me remains the same around constitutional difficulties and treating Australians differently. So the advice to me has always been, don't treat a Victorian differently to a Western Australian. I've also talked to the Police Commissioner about it. It'd be operationally difficult on our borders. But perhaps most importantly, I'm saying, let's just do it once. Let's do it right. The advice from the Chief Health Officer is a 2 replication cycle period for everybody, so 28 days, and then they can come in. So that is July 17. So from a constitutional ground, from an operational ground, from a medical ground, the advice to me has been consistent. Do it once, do it right, July 17.
When you say do it once, does that mean that closing the borders again is off the table no matter what happens from here?
We are keeping our police at the border for 14 days after we open on July 17. That's one replication cycle. We'll be keeping a track of who comes into the Territory, why and where they come from, so we've got an evidence base around things. So that leaves the architecture in place, the infrastructure in place, so we can make informed decisions as we go. If you look at what we've done inside Territory borders, for example, when we are advised on 2 but enforced on 10, there's always a capacity for me to go both ways in making our decisions. With the borders, that's much more difficult. I don't want to go backwards, but I think it's important to have that infrastructure in place. We've seen how deadly coronavirus is overseas. Australia's done a magnificent job. I see no reason for why Australia won't keep doing a magnificent job, but I think you have to keep insurance in the back pocket around a second wave.
Why has the government not significantly reduced the debt burden in your 4 years that you've had?
So we've had significant cuts to our GST. We've recognised that. We've done those repair measures. We showed both our mid-year and March quarterly, so that's 3/4 of the way through the year that we're making significant progress in terms of what our deficit level will be. Obviously, coronavirus has now hit. We're going to see the GST pool get crunched across the country. So that obviously put significant pressure on revenues again.
But mostly you haven't actually implemented most of the Lancalant recommendations.
So what we haven't implemented was in the 3rd stage. So it's a 3-year plan. We're most of the way through it. We've done everything we said we will do.
Do you think that the coronavirus crisis has helped your chances of re-election come August 22?
For me, it's about dealing with what's in front of you. So coronavirus hit, no one saw it coming, and it's about just doing what was right and what was best for Territorians. I think a lot of the decisions I've made along the journey have not been, or I certainly did not think they'd be popular. I made decisions that I thought were hard, were gut-wrenching, that saw people in employment queues. They're not the things that leaders want to do. That's not why you get elected, to see more people line up at Centrelink. So for me, it is what it is. I've done what I've done. When the election comes along, August 22, Territorians will make their call about where they want the Territory to go over the next 4 years. That's up to them. My job right now is to do everything I can to save lives and save jobs, and that's what I'll do.
There's some people who would argue, Chief, that the cure has been tougher than actually preventing coronavirus, if you know what I mean, the economic side of this. I mean, was that a decision that you ever wrestled with in a difficult way? Just because, I mean, I know it's not easy either way, but a lot of people's lives arguably ruined, jobs lost, that sort of thing.
I think if you've got any doubt about this, look at other countries where coronavirus got out of control. There, you're seeing lives lost and economies ruined. Let's be really clear. This is a health crisis. Addressing this as a health crisis, saving lives, is what leaves the economy best prepared to then come back. That's why I think we will be the comeback capital for Australia. You can't... What price of life? Like, honestly, for me, look at everywhere where coronavirus has had a massive impact, the economy there has been smashed. Here in Australia, we are tracking better than the rest of the world on both the health and economic measures. Yes, we will get a hit because it's a pandemic. We've had to take some pretty tough measures, but we will come out better than most because we did the hard decisions early, both as a country and as a Northern Territory. We've saved lives. I think I think we've done what we needed to do.
You talked about the possibility of 2,000 deaths in a worst case scenario here in the Northern Territory. We've ended up with no deaths. Has there been an issue though with the modelling? Was there a catastrophisation of the worst case scenario that led to perhaps more severe measures, more severe lockdowns than were actually really required?
No, in my opinion. And the basis of that is you look at America, the UK, Italy, Spain, and the countries go on. I think what it shows is that we made the right tough decisions early, and our federation works. You look at other places and their forms of Commonwealth, their forms of decision making, how the states work with the overarching body. The National Cabinet has worked. The Prime Minister's done an amazing job getting us all together, and we had the confidence to make tough decisions when we needed to make them, and that got us ahead of the pack. And so for me, we got the right forecasts in and we made the right tough decisions.
A lot of the concern about the economic impact has come from the urban areas, and a lot of concern about the health impacts has been rooted in remote areas. That reflects upon the divide in territory life. How have you wrestled with that, and how do you think it's going to affect the way these issues happen going forward?
I think we have to look at the territory as one. I understand the point you're making that there often is this division, but all territory lives are important. We have massive mobility in the NT, and while it was often characterised as remote lives were the most at risk, are vulnerable coming in and out of our major urban centres. And I think we move much more than what you might see in a New South Wales or Victoria, and what the travel might be from a remote region in New South Wales in and out of a Sydney. So I think a lot of Territorians understand that. There has been economic impacts across the NT as well. But for me, the way I've treated this is a health crisis of which there's economic impacts. And if you respond properly and appropriately to the health crisis, you're best placed to then deal with the economic impacts. That's my approach. It's also the advice I received at National Cabinet from Stephen Kennedy as the Secretary of Federal Treasury and Phil Lowe as the Governor of the Reserve Bank of Australia. This has to be first and foremost treated as a health crisis, addressed and fixed as a health crisis, and that's the best way to tackle the economic side of things. So for me, I saw it in that order rather than dividing the territory.
Why is Dr. Heavy not with you right now to explain that incubation period and what happens next with the tracing of people who come in here and might test positive, and why isn't he here to explain that health advice that you've received that we haven't been able to receive for over a month?
I'm the Chief Minister. I'm here to own my decision and take all the questions. Dr. Heggie will be available this afternoon at the Public Accounts Committee, and all questions can be asked of him from the opposition that they want to ask. I can talk to Dr. Heggie about being available, but for this press conference, I wanted to own the decision. I chose not to have the Police Commission here or Dr. Heggie or the CEO of Health. This was my call. I'm owning it.
To Kathleen's point, though, I mean, we're being told that you're relying on the Chief Health Officer's advice. The opposition's saying that they're happy to open the borders on June 22 based on their briefing with the Chief Health Officer. Wouldn't it be better to get that independent view ourselves rather than relying on what two sides of politics are telling us? Because he hasn't been available for a week, as far as I know.
Well, he's definitely going to be available today for 2 hours at Public Accounts Committee and be open to questioning. I'll talk to him about being available full stop. It's not often I get to a press conference, front the questions and get asked for somebody else to come and do the answers for me, but I don't mind getting a chop out, so I'll take that advice, but I'm owning this decision. I'm more than happy to make the Chief Officer available.
You've held both of these announcements about borders on the days that the Public Accounts Committee has been sitting. Are you trying to obscure the debt situation that the Territory's in by doing those dual announcements, doing the announcements on the day the committee sits?
No. So this one's pretty straightforward. I said very publicly 10 days after those mass gathering events, that 10 days was based off the medical advice I received at the time. I said these things are happening down south. When will we know if they lead to community transmission and spread? I was told 10 days. So yesterday clocked over the 10th day, so this morning's the 11th day. I got the advice this morning, I made the decision today. So it wasn't anything to do with the Public Accounts Committee, it was based off the medical advice I got.
There's another 18 new cases in Victoria today, I think 21 yesterday, 2 more cases today that came out of the protests. Are you sure that...
I pushed on that point with the Chief Health Officer.
And what did he say?
So it goes to, obviously, quarantine and interstate arrivals. I think the biggest one there was that it was only 2 from the mass gathering events, and that the advice is they didn't gain it at those mass gathering events, and it doesn't seem to be even spread at those mass gathering events. So the confidence seems to be that the community transmission is low, that there is containment, and that we can control it. And the lack of cases was the evidence that the Chief Health Officer put to me, but I pushed on that quite hard. Victoria's probably the one spot that worries me a little bit now. That's no reflection on Dan. It's been a very difficult spot all the way through. But the advice is that we can make the decision, and we wait 2 replication cycles as 28 days.
The Langerland review effectively said that the territory would be tantamount to bankrupt within a decade without change. That was based on the forecasts that were made before the COVID crisis. Prime Minister said half an hour ago that we've already lost at least 2 years' growth. It takes 2 years to get back to where we were before we started, and 5 years to potentially catch up. Do you think that that means that it's likely the territory will need a bailout of some sort, or have a major financial crisis in the foreseeable future? Do you have any advice to that?
Well, I think there's a couple of different ways of looking at it. First of all, we put those land measures in place. We're not on track to the destiny that you were saying we were going to. That's why we did the Langerland report. That's why we took those measures. So we're not on that track at all. The second thing is 70% of the Territory Government's budget comes through the Australian Government. 50% is GST, the other is in national partnerships and other forms of funding. So 70% of our money comes from the Australian Government. If there is a revenue crunch, we've been making this case now for 3 years. If there's a revenue crunch, as there has been on GST, and those cuts over those last 3 years of $500 million a year, and now we've got the GST pool crunched, if that money's not coming in from the Australian Government through the means they would normally give it to us, then there is a case for that money to be provided through a different form. Now, this is not hypothetical. We've seen this happen in Western Australia when they had their GST crunched. The case was made very well by both sides of politics in WA that Western Australians should not be punished because the GST had changed, that there needed to be a sustainable distribution of revenue from the Australian Government. You know, horizontal fiscal equalisation, to glue the whole nation together, etc., etc., etc. This is just the way the Commonwealth is meant to work. So, for me, there is a very strong case, and there's always been a very strong case, that the Australian Government is meant to provide a certain level of funding to the states and territories so they can operate. They have the income tax. They have the main means of making money in this country. The states and the territories are the ones that pay for the services in this country. We're the ones that are responsible for spending most of the money in the country. That's why we have the federation and the means to distribute that money fairly to all. And we've been making a case across the term that the Northern Territory should receive a fair amount of funding from the Commonwealth.
So for that to occur, you would effectively, because of the way the GST pool works, you'd effectively have to take money from a different revenue source, which would be largely collected from other Australians, and bring it to the territory through a separate mechanism. Have you had specific discussions with the federal government about doing that, and what sort of concessions might they want in return?
Well, I've argued with the Australian Government for the entire term that the Northern Territory should receive a fairer distribution of funding from the Commonwealth. So that's not a new conversation. We've been arguing that for a very long time, because if you look at the Northern Territory situation, I think I've been very clear about this, I don't believe in taxing businesses out of existence, and I don't believe in deep cuts. We've got to find a fair way through this. Langlands gave us a fair way through this to make sure we can keep growing the Territory economy, because the best, most important way through this is obviously for the Territory to grow its own sources of revenue, which will take some time. That's why we've put in place post-Corona, or during Corona, the Territory Economic Reconstruction Commission, so that we can have plan informed by the changes that coronavirus will have on the global economy, the best way towards 5% growth.
What would you estimate for...
Population data from, oh my God, I want that one. Population data from the ABS released today shows that our population levels are the lowest that they have been since March 2016. Was boundless possible an abject failure?
No. So we've obviously had a massive impact from coronavirus over people moving full stop, but I think we've now also got the best argument we can make for anyone moving to the Northern Territory. We are the safest and best place in the country. I discussed population last National Cabinet too. I made the case that the Northern Territory does need those policy decisions by the Australian Government. The Productivity Commission recognised that the zone tax rebate no longer works for the purpose it was intended, which was to get Australians to move north and stay north. So the Australian Government has more levers in this place to pull than we do, but we will keep pushing the case that the Territory is where you need to be, that we have got the jobs and we are a great place to live. And I think our handling of coronavirus has made that case best.
Will voters know how much debt we're heading for next year and in the forward estimates for the time they go to vote?
So we'll be delivering the coronavirus financial report on July 29. Treasury's doing a lot of work now about what goes into that, but we said that will include net debt and
Could I
deficit.
just ask you to clarify your answer to my previous question? Has the federal government given you any indication of what it might expect in response, in return for providing some sort of bailout or increase in revenue?
I think that implies a conversation that hasn't occurred.
How long do you think it will be before the economy is where it was before the COVID outbreak?
I think it's too early to say. I do know that we will be the comeback capital. If you look at the fact that we open first and fastest, if you look at the things that we have at our disposal, I think we'll be able to lead the comeback for the country. That goes to lessons learned from coronavirus, or the ones that we are still learning from coronavirus. We have a vulnerable supply chain. We saw that during the pandemic. We need to have a stronger manufacturing base. Now, the place to establish that is here in the Northern Territory. We are close to market, we are close to energy, and we have the raw materials needed. So for me, from my conversations with Andrew Liveris and the NCCC, the work that the Territory Economic Reconstruction Commission is doing right now, we're best placed to do that. So I think we can genuinely lead the country out of this.
We've
Last
also
report
seen earlier this week, you mentioned about the hotel is now significantly delayed, and also Project Sea Dragon is struggling to get its final investment across the line to be able to start up. So those are two major projects that you've been relying on this term to help the economy get going. I mean, we're still in that situation, aren't we?
So the Shiplift and Marine Industry Services is on track. That's probably the most important project we're working on right now. So that will see jobs in a new industry sector created here, and the maintenance. We've got the terabit territory and the data centres on track. That's going to be a major investment. We've got Sun Cable on track, but in the short term, and this is obviously important across the country now the nation's in recession, we've got to work on what those stimulus measures are. We've got the home improvement scheme rolling, we've got the business improvement grants rolling, we've got the immediate work grants rolling, we've got the Small Business Survival Fund grants rolling. We are unfortunately still in a state of our economy. Now the nation is now joining us where we've got to stimulate activity. It has been interesting to see others around the country make decisions that we've been making here for a while. So a nationwide home improvement scheme through the Australian government. The Western Australian government recently has essentially done our build bonus scheme to get the residential construction sector going. It's important we get cash circulating. It's important we look after the jobs that we've got here so we can lay the foundation and keep that foundation strong for those big projects that are coming. We've got the Santos decision finalised now. We'll see Caldita, Barossa flowing soon. Obviously that's their decision to make, but they're now ready for that decision, the backfill. So I do think we are in a very good spot to emerge from the coronavirus crisis strong and help the country.
Will the government actively encourage interstate tourists to attend major events such as the Darwin Festival once borders reopen?
Obviously, marketing isn't what I do, but major events, tourism and others will market the Northern Territory as a safe place to come and where you should spend your money.
When you faced the voters in 2016, you took a platform which involved a lot of publicly funded projects, things like museums, public sector reform reviews. Some of those things have fallen by the wayside. It was clear then that the Territory was facing an economic hole. And through this term, your government seems to have shifted its focus significantly to concentrate on economic projects, sort of you just described. Do you think that you had the settings wrong then? Did it take you 4 years to learn that lesson?
No. I think what we learned post the last election, so we knew about the $1 billion deficit from the CLP, that was on the record, so that wasn't learned. We knew about the black hole there. But what we didn't know then was the GST cuts that were coming in, and the Territory government's done a lot of heavy lifting, as is often when times are hard, governments do the lifting. We've done the lifting. We've made sure that businesses can stay open, that Territorians can stay in work. But if you want to grow the economy with 5% a year, that cannot be off the back of Territory taxpayer money. That can only be done off the back of private sector investment. That's what we need to secure. I think we've now got a better relationship with the Australian government than we've had before, and we're seeing a lot of progress there in the Darwin Sea deal, the Jabiru deal, the Barclay deal, and the remote housing deal. They all happened under Scott Morrison's watch. You know, to give the PM credit, we've had lots of conversations with the Australian government. It took Prime Minister Morrison to get those deals done, and we've got a good relationship with the Australian government now. We need the Australian government at the table for that economic growth too. But clearly, if you want to grow the economy, which is the only way through a lot of things, you have to have private sector investment. We're going to support those private sector projects.
The Shiplift
Thank you,
is
everyone.
300